I have a Whiteside router inlay kit that I've used several times for inlaying. Here's some boxes I made with some initials on them, using this inlay kit to cut out the letters from templates that I made, and I thought I'd try it out on a butterfly joint. Butterfly joints are typical in a slab use where you've got a crack or a split in the wood. You want to keep the wood, but you want to join that crack with something that'll hold, like a dovetail joint, and so butterfly joints are best for that. So I started out by making a template, the way I make lots of templates, by simply raising my table saw blade through a piece of 1/2-inch plywood. Actually, better yet would be 1/4-inch plywood or 1/4-inch MDF for this use, but in this illustration I'm doing it with 1/2-inch plywood. So I'm drawing out a rough idea of a template for a butterfly patch or butterfly joint. What you have to keep in mind when you're using this kit is the thing that you draw, the template lines are approximately a 1/4 inch outside of what the finished product is going to look like. In other words, if you draw lines 1 inch apart, you're going to only end up with a 1/2 of an inch of inlay in between those, because the router bit sits about a 1/4 of an inch out from the edge of the bushing. I'll show you how that works here in a minute. The kit consists of a bushing and then a sleeve that fits on that bushing that allows the fixture to be moved 1/8 of an inch further into the work, an 1/8 inch router bit, and then a guide for when you attach the bushing to your router to make sure it's dead in the center. I'm going to show in an illustration in a minute how all of these parts work together, but the idea mainly is that this will cut an 1/8 inch groove, and then when you put this bushing fixture on, it will move that router bit to the other side of the 1/8 inch groove, so that your first cut is the outside of the insert and your second cut is the inside of the cutout. Let me illustrate how that works. Imagine that this green rectangle is going to become your insert. The blue rectangle represents your template. This gold represents the bushing with an 1/8 inch router bit. And you can see that that makes a 1/4 of an inch between what's going to become your insert and your template. Now you've got a piece that you want to hollow out for this insert to fit into. So the work piece is represented by the green. The template again is represented by the blue. But now the bushing has pushed that router bit 1/8 inch to the right, so that once you've hollowed out your work piece, you'll see that that hollowed out section lines up with the size of the insert you created. Hence, the piece fits in perfectly tight. So for this little test, I'm going to create a template by raising my table saw blade through a piece of scrap, a 1/2-inch plywood. I think I said earlier it probably would have been better had this been 1/4-inch material, maybe MDF or plywood, but this is just some scrap I had laying around. So I just raised my blade through the work, clamping the work down to the tabletop as I do this, trying to land exactly where I need to be by extending those lines and just double checking. And you can make some mistakes here because the overcuts will not affect the accuracy of the jig. And so I just raise these blades through one section at a time, trying to line up right where I need to be so that the intersections turn out close to that center line that I've marked on the wood. I raise up the blade now 90 degrees or 180 degrees with the edge of the plywood, cutting out that final cut. And you'll see that I have my butterfly shape template now that I've created by just simply clamping the wood over the table saw blade and raising the blade through the plywood. It gives you straight cuts and it gives you lots of control, and what you end up with here is a template. Now I've double-sided taped that template down to a piece of walnut, and that walnut is hence double-sided taped down to a sacrificial piece of 1/4-inch plywood. Now when you're cutting the insert, you have to make sure that you keep the router bushing against the edge of the template. If you wander out into the middle of the area, you're going to ruin the insert. So you want to keep your router tight against the edge of the template until you've made one turn past. And then once you tear up the tape, it's left the insert taped to the board, and there it is. That insert now is basically 1/4 of an inch smaller than the template you created. Now you place that same template over the piece of wood that you want this insert to fit. You put the guided the spacer on your bushing, and now it's holding that blade 1/8 of an inch further into the work. Now in this case you can outline or trace the outline of the template, but once you've done that, you're just cutting the outside edge. Then you have to wander the router bit around through the field of that cutout in order to hollow it all out level. You could, if you were careful, make one round and then hollow out the center with a chisel, but it's pretty easy with the router to just jiggle it around in there until you've got all of the area cut out. If you've set your plunge to the right depth, you're going to get a fairly level bottom for that cutout to fit into. You can see I've left quite a bit behind. I went back in and just kind of shaken that all out of there by just making several passes with the router. When you're done, it just seems like you're never really done. I took a chisel and just took the last few remaining pieces out, and you'll see that the insert fits pretty nice for just an experiment. So this is the Whiteside Inlay kit, and I'm using it to just experiment on the idea of a butterfly joint. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, please subscribe, and thank you for watching.